You know, have you ever wondered about discipline? I mean, not the kind that feels like this constant grinding battle with yourself, but the other kind. The kind you see in people who just seem so centered, so grounded. Well, today, we're going to explore a totally different path to that kind of strength. It's one that comes from a whole philosophy of living, not just from brute force. So, let's dive in and see what that really means. So think about it like this. On one side, you've got what most of us are familiar with, right? Forced discipline. That's the daily grind, the constant resistance, that feeling of just struggling and struggling until you're completely exhausted. But then, on the other side, there's grounded discipline. And this is all about flow and patience and this deep, quiet strength. It's really the difference between fighting against the current and just becoming the river. And this leads us to this really interesting paradox. I mean, we're all taught that to be more disciplined, you just have to try harder, right? Just push more. But what if that constant effort, that white knuckle grind, is the very thing that's holding us back? What if it's the fast track to burnout, not real sustainable growth? So let's just ask a totally different question here. Forget about the next productivity hack or some new technique that promises to change your life. What if, what if the real secret to discipline isn't a technique at all, but a philosophy? What if that deep, lasting discipline we're all looking for is just a natural side effect of a completely different way of living? And this is where some really powerful Japanese ideas come into play. See, in this way of thinking, discipline isn't some separate box you have to tick off on your to-do list. No, it's woven right into the fabric of life itself. It's just a natural result of how you live, not some constant, exhausting effort you got to keep up. So really, the crucial point is this. It's a total shift in focus. We're flipping it from the outside in to the inside out. So forget about trying to force control over every little impulse. The real goal here is to build an internal foundation, a character that is so solid, so strong, that control just becomes effortless. It's just who you are. Okay, so how do we actually build that foundation? Well, it rests on a couple of key pillars. And our very first pillar is this concept called Gaman. This is a quiet but incredibly profound kind of strength that's been a cornerstone of Japanese culture for, well, centuries. Now, Gaman often gets translated as just, patience or endurance, but honestly, it is so much more than that. The really crucial part here is the emphasis on dignity. See, Gaman isn't just about gritting your teeth and pushing through something tough, it's about how you do it. It's about maintaining your composure, your grace, even when things are incredibly difficult. So, what does Gaman look like in practice? Well, it looks like real emotional maturity. It's that self-restraint that stops you from reacting impulsively. It's that incredible ability to stay calm when everything around you is just chaos. And it's a kind of resilience that doesn't need to complain or look for pity. It just endures. There's a reason this saying has stuck around for so long. Practicing Gaman it's not easy. It's tough. It really requires you to just sit with discomfort. But the fruit that it produces, that's a powerful internal strength, a kind of deep resilience that can pretty much weather any storm. All right, let's get to our second pillar, which really builds on the first one. You could say that if Gaman is about how you endure the storm, Kintsugi is about what you do after the storm has passed. And it's a philosophy that will completely change how you look at failure and imperfection. So kintsugi, it literally means golden joinery. And it's this amazing Japanese art of repairing broken pottery. But here's the magic. Instead of trying to hide the cracks and pretend the break never happened, the artists actually highlight them. They mend the pieces back together using a lacquer that's mixed with powdered gold, or maybe silver, or even platinum. And this physical art perfectly captures the philosophy behind it. What kintsugi teaches us is that our breaks, our failures, our scars, they're not something to be ashamed of or hidden away. They are a fundamental part of our history. And in fact, it's those golden lines of repair that can make us even more beautiful, more unique, and more valuable than we were before. I mean, just think about this process in your own life. First, you have to acknowledge the break. You have to admit, okay, I failed. I made a mistake. Then you gather the pieces, right? You look at what happened and you learn from it. Next, you mend with gold, which really just means healing with self-compassion and wisdom. And finally, you embrace this new beauty, the stronger, more resilient version of yourself that has been shaped by its history. Okay, so how do these two pillars, Gaman, patient endurance, and Kintsugi, this golden repair, how do they come together to create discipline? Well, they work together hand in hand to build that strong internal foundation we were talking about earlier. They're what creates a truly centered life. Yeah, this really breaks it down nicely. Gaman, that's what gives you the strength to patiently endure the storm, the setbacks, the long, hard road to your goal. It builds that in-the-moment resilience. Then Kintsugi comes in. That's the wisdom to pick up the pieces after the storm, to learn from the damage, and to turn your failures into something beautiful and strong. So one is for getting through the hardship, and the other is for the healing that comes after. And this brings us right back to the central idea of this whole explainer. When you build a foundation on the patient strength of Gaman and the healing wisdom of Kintsugi, you stop needing to force discipline anymore. It just starts to arise naturally from a character that is resilient, that is self-aware, and that isn't afraid of being imperfect. You don't have to force control because you're already centered. So, I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. We all have cracks, right? We all have a history of breaks and repairs. So instead of trying to hide them, what would it look like to actually highlight them? What broken parts of you are just waiting to be repaired with gold?